May it please the court,
Yes, sir.
counsel, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. Cherish Periwinkle was 8 years old, and she weighed 67 pounds. She was 8 years old and weighed 67 pounds. As this defendant sits here in his courtroom today, he may not look like much of a threat in his shirt, in his tie. But on that night, in comparison to that little girl, he had the strength of a giant. He selected her. He lured her away from her family and safety. He made her feel safe through his lies and his deception. And then he preyed upon her. He drove out of that parking lot of the Walmart to where no eyes could see and no ears could hear. And then that little girl had to endure a nightmare no child should ever have to endure. She was gagged so forcefully that her gums bled, her lips tore, her nose was bruised. Him trying to silence her screams. He raped her. He sodomized her. He tore her apart. He sucked on her breast. He made her suck his penis. He left behind semen in her mouth and in every part of her private area. And then he took something, we don't know what. He wrapped it around that little girl's neck and he strangled the life out of her. He strangled her so hard that the blood vessels in her face burst. Her eyes hemorrhaged because she fought. Dr. Rao said it took minutes, depending on how she fought back, but you could tell through the damage in her eyes that she fought until the last breath left her body. And he silenced her. And then he took her and waded into the water. He entombed her in that watery grave, hoping that no one would find her, hoping that no one would see what he did. In opening statement, the defense attorneys accused us of trying to anger you. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that if you have anger inside of you, it's not because of what I said or what Ms. Nelson said. It's because of what you saw. It's because of what he did. But the court will instruct you later on. Because your verdict should not be based upon emotion. It should not be based upon anger. Let me read to you the instruction that you will hear later on today. This case must not be decided for or against anyone because you feel sorry for anyone or because you are angry at anyone. Your verdict in this case should be based upon the legal analysis of the facts. The facts as you see them. The facts as you find them. With reflection and deliberation, you are to speak to what the truth is about what happened to Cherish Periwinkle on June 21st and June 22nd of 2013. Reason, not emotion, should guide your deliberations. So in doing that, let me go through the evidence that I believe was established in mountains in this courtroom throughout the course of this week. I want to talk to you a little bit about Rain Periwinkle and those videos that you saw from Dollar General, from Walmart. Because Rain Periwinkle, through her testimony on the witness stand and through her frantic and panicked 911 call, narrates for you what you see in silence on those videotapes. It shows to you and explains to you what is happening while you watch. Rain Periwinkle arrived at Dollar General, and this defendant came sometime after. He walked in. For what? He stood at the front of the store. He looked at a couple of magazines. He asked Brad Calhoun, "Do you have adult magazines here?" Mr. Calhoun said no. And then he loitered because he saw them. He saw those children playfully hopping around the store. He saw Rain. And he loitered around the front of the Dollar General and watched. He didn't buy anything. He wasn't there to shop. He just watched them, and you can eerily see that. With the clarity of hindsight, now that we know what happened, you can see what he does and how he just lingers there in front of the store. And then he leaves. He walks out of the store, leaving behind the Periwinkle family. He goes to his van and he opens the door. Does he leave? Does he drive away? He has no true purpose there other than to prey upon them. So he leaves his van and he goes back and he waits 4 minutes and 20 seconds, leaning up against that concrete pole in front of the Dollar General store. And he waits for them to walk out. And then he pounces. This is where the deception comes in. He saw Rain Periwinkle inside that store. He saw that she had her hands full with those children. And he saw that she was down on her luck and money was tight. She's debating to buy or not buy a $7 dress at a Dollar General because she needs the money to get Cherish to that airport the next day because she's going to see her father. And so Rain decides that she doesn't have enough money to buy that dress. And he offers. He offers to buy that dress. Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes in this world we like to think that there is goodness in man. And that day, Rain Periwinkle hoped that his intentions were true and pure. That he was just being a good Samaritan, generous. He saw her down on her luck and he was going to help. That's what she believed. We know that's not the case. He offers this gift card His wife is going to bring it, driving the gold car, and they wait for nearly 20 minutes in the Dollar General parking lot for the wife that never showed up, for the car that didn't exist. She was wary of him, but he tried to earn her trust by telling her things like where he went to church, that he worked for Happy Jacks, that he had little ones of his own. And then the outward appearances, he looks like a harmless old man. Little did she know what lurked beneath the surface. They go to Walmart, more conversation. He tells her, "You're safe," when they drive over there. And they wait in the parking lot, again, continuing this ruse, this lie, that his wife is on the way and this gift card is there so that she can do what she was incapable of doing on her own. Not buy for herself, but provide for her 3 young children. They've loaded up that stroller, they've put it in the van, and they waited in there until the kids were getting anxious. The wife wasn't showing up, so they go inside. Did he leave? Did he give up on what he hoped to accomplish that day? No. He goes in that store after him. And you see on that video how he walks down, looking down every aisle, looking for rain, looking for those little girls. And then he stands by in Walmart for hours, lurking, watching. Then, no one could tell his intent. He's standing within feet of Walmart employees in the shoe section. He engages with conversation right at the front door with the McDonald's employee. To the untrained eye, he just looks like Uncle Joe, who's shopping with Rain and the kids. But we get a little glimpse of what was truly in his mind inside that Walmart. The only thing he picked up, the only thing that he placed in that shopping cart, rope. We know the intent behind that because we've seen what happened afterwards. I'm going to get something to eat. Do you want anything? He had been with Cherish throughout the course of the evening, close to her, befriended her. And she runs up to her mother and says, "We're going to get something to eat. What do you want?" "Cheeseburgers." That's the last word that Rain Periwinkle got to say to her little girl. Because she follows him up to the front of the store. She stands with him in front of McDonald's for moments. And she walks out with him and gets in that van. And you see it drive out of the parking lot, stop next to the Rogers, and then drive out the back and turn right onto Lem Turner. Nobody ever sees that child alive again. You heard testimony about his apprehension. You heard testimony about the discovery of Cherish's little body. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, you heard from heroes on that witness stand. Because when he placed that body in that river, he did not want that body to be found. On the videotape, he just looks like he's walking out the door. He didn't want you to see what he did in the hours that followed. But Officer Henson, after being told to be on the lookout, saw a van while she was assisting an accident. And it matched the description, and she got behind it. And she called Officer Wilkie and other officers into the pursuit. And Officer Wilkie made that traffic stop. They ordered him out of the car. And when he patted him down, he felt this defendant soaking wet. And he yelled out, "She's in the water!" And his head snapped and turned. Because in that instant, he was shocked that he knew that Officer Wilkie knew where she might be. Marquita Howard, Christina Howard, Brenda Fillingen, but for their observations, but for them seeing something and saying something, we may have never found Cherish Periwinkle. Or if we did, the evidence which identifies her killer could have been lost because of the time, because of the water, because of the insects that we see on her body, because of the gators that Officer Wilkie feared might take her away. Those three heroes saw something. Three citizens who didn't know Cherish. They see the van, they didn't know about the Amber Alert, but when they found out, they rush out of their houses. They drive down to the scene. To do what? I don't know. These women are just there to try to help. You saw Miss Fillingen walk into this courtroom with a cane. She told you she ran out of the house without shoes on her feet. Trying to help, trying to save that little girl. You heard how the Howards cried out, "Cherish!" near the wood line, seeing if she was somewhere there, not suspecting the evil that he would have done upon her. But without their observations, without their efforts, Officer Wilkie wouldn't even known what water to search. He goes back after taking this defendant in custody and meets up at that location with homicide detectives. He starts the search, and his canine gator finds that little girl in her watery grave. You heard from Detective Long the painstaking efforts they took to preserve all the evidence that they could find. Dr. Rao responded to the scene and assisted on that day to try to preserve evidence. And when they removed her body from underneath that log and they could see, based upon the marks on her neck and the blood in her eyes, that she had been strangled, Detective Long immediately swabbed her neck. Before she was transported to the medical examiner, she swabbed her neck at the scene, hoping there may be evidence left behind to identify her killer. And then Dr. Rao, on that same day, examined that little girl's genitals. She swabbed her mouth. She swabbed every orifice of her body. She collected the evidence that proves to you in this courtroom who is responsible for the horror that you saw in those photographs. Because Nicole Lee told you, when she looked at those swabs, she found semen in the mouth, in the vagina, in her anus. And then when those swabs were tested for DNA, she found an exact match to Donald Smith on what he left behind in that little girl's rectum. In her vagina, not a full profile, but still a DNA matching profile that still exceeded the possibility that it was anybody else other than Donald Smith that walked the face of the earth. A statistical impossibility, even though it had degraded and it was interpreted. And an exact match around her neck, where he strangled her to death. His DNA, nobody else's. The true killer of Cherish Periwinkle sits across the courtroom from me right now. Those are the facts. They are undisputed. They are overwhelming. So what do you do with those facts? And how do you apply it to the law? Ladies and gentlemen, the judge will instruct you throughout the course of the jury instructions as to what the elements of these crimes are. And I want to just briefly go over them with you and demonstrate how they have been proven beyond any doubt. Let's start first with the sexual battery. The first element, Donald James Smith injured the sexual organ of Cherish Periwinkle in an attempt to commit an act upon Cherish Periwinkle in which the sexual organ of Donald Smith would have penetrated or would have had union with the anus, vagina, or mouth of Cherish Periwinkle. She's under the age of 12, he's over the age of 18. You saw the photographs. Dr. Rao described the injuries as devastating. When you compared those photographs to the anatomical chart that was published as an exhibit, it was unrecognizable how much damage he inflicted with every thrust during the rape. And he left behind his genetic fingerprint so that we know exactly who did it. Without more, you have undeniable evidence of guilt against this defendant, but then you have him.
Yeah! You still think she's 12? Yeah. That's right in my alley, right there. Huh? That's my target area right there. That's what I go after. Well, you have fun with that one. Yeah? Damn, boy. She ain't had nothing like that, though. That's because she ain't black. She had a lot for a white girl.
The arrogance, the hubris 2 years later when he is describing an 8-year-old girl's anatomy. But that's his target area. That's what he goes after. Kidnapping. Donald James Smith forcibly, secretly, or by threat confined, abducted, or imprison Cherish Periwinkle against her will. He had no lawful authority to do so, and Donald James Smith acted with the intent to commit or facilitate the commission of a sexual battery. Secretly means the defendant intended to isolate or insulate Cherish Periwinkle from meaningful contact or meaningful communications with the public. You can watch them walk out that store. Watch right here when he looks back over his shoulder to see if anybody's following. Calmly, they walk out the front door, Cherish in her pink flip-flops that we later find next to Mr. Bruton's house, thrown in a garbage can along with the stroller nearby. And then this seems somewhat inexplicable. He drives up with her in the van, sitting next to him, and he engages two strangers. Two people he doesn't know. Two people who don't know him. Why would he introduce two more witnesses into this case? Think about what he said to them. We're going for cheeseburgers. And think about what he had told them all along. My wife's coming. She drives a gold car. Probably as they were driving away, Cherish may have tried to get a little bit nervous because she's leaving her mom behind. He had to calm her. He had to make her feel safe. So he continues this ruse with these two strangers until he can pull away. He pulls up, it's a right turn. He makes that right-hand turn. And then she's gone. He gagged her, concealed her. The police were looking for him since 11:19 p.m. at night. That's when the first officers arrived on the scene. And they were looking for that man. But nobody can find her. Because he hid her, he gagged her, and he had his way with her. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is kidnapping, without any doubt. And that's where he left it. He threw her away, trying to hide her under that log, trying to weight her body down so that nobody could ever see what he did to her. We talked about this a little bit in jury selection, and there are two ways that the state of Florida can prove to you first-degree premeditated murder. One is felony murder, and the instructions before you. As to the count one, to prove the crime of first-degree felony murder, the state must prove the following three elements beyond and to the exclusion of a reasonable doubt. Cherish Periwinkle is dead while engaged in the commission of a kidnapping or sexual battery. Donald James Smith caused the death of Cherish Periwinkle, and that he is in fact the person who actually killed Cherish Periwinkle. We just have already gone through the sexual battery elements and the kidnapping elements, and he is the person who took her life during the course of those felonies. And so yes, he is guilty of felony murder in the first degree. And what is unique about this in your verdict forms that you will see later is he can be both guilty of felony murder in the first degree and premeditated murder. And there is a section on that verdict form for you to mark both findings. That he killed her during the commission of a rape and kidnapping, and that he intended to take the life of Cherish Periwinkle. And then we go to the elements of first-degree murder, premeditated murder. Cherish Periwinkle is dead. The death was caused by the criminal act of Donald James Smith. In the killing, there was a premeditated killing of Cherish Periwinkle. And I know the judge is going to instruct you that premeditation can be formed in an instant. But we have much more than that in this case. You've been thinking about this all evening long. But it's just not his intent, it's just not his thoughts that establish beyond any doubt it's premeditation. It is not. Ladies and gentlemen, since last week we have asked you all to sacrifice your time and your attention to this case so that we can seek the truth about what happened to Cherish Periwinkle. And on behalf of the state of Florida, I thank you for your time and attention, but I'm going to ask you to give me just a few more minutes. I could publish these photos. You'll have them back in the jury room. But I suspect you never need to look at these photographs again. Based upon what we saw yesterday, those images will forever be a part of you. They will forever be a part of your memory, burned into your memory. So I'm not going to ask you to look at those again. What I'm going to ask you to do is I want you all to sit here. Give me 3 minutes. I want you to just sit here and quietly reflect. As 3 minutes count down. I want you to remember how he waited for them out front of the Family Dollar. You can see that vision of the video in your mind right now. I want you to remember how he feigned in faith that he was sincere, that he was generous, to fool them into trusting. Remember the words of the mother on the witness stand and in that 911 phone call. I want you to think in your mind and remember that video of him lurking over top of them in the Walmart. That blue arrow so close to Cherish throughout the course of those hours. Waiting for his opportunity to strike. I want you to remember that little girl walking happily with him towards the front of the store. Standing in front of McDonald's and home a cheeseburger. walking out that door with him. And now I want you to go back in the memories that have burned in your mind right now with those pictures. And I want you to remember what he did to her. How he strangled the life from her body. Three minutes. That's how long, Dr. Rao, how long we just sat here. That's how long it took, at a minimum, to take her life. While she fought, while she bled, while every last breath left her body. He silenced her, and then he took her and he dumped her in that water. If that is not premeditated murder, then I don't know what is. Back in jury selection, one of your fellow jurors commented that Cherish did not have a voice in this court. Respectfully, I disagree. Even in death, through the irrefutable physical evidence that was left behind, the injuries to her body, the biological evidence that he left on her and inside of her. Through that evidence, she has a voice. And from the grave, she's crying out to you. Donald Smith raped me. Donald Smith sodomized me. Donald Smith strangled me until every last breath left my body. In the final moments of her life, this defendant took from that little girl everything that was innocent and pure. And then he took her life. Now it's time to hold him accountable for what he did. Ladies and gentlemen, find him guilty as charged and hold him accountable for what he did. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cleo. Mr. Fletcher,
Your Honor, the defense witness.
you're waiving your closing argument.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Cleo, the defense has waived their closing argument.
Thank you, ma'am. The state has nothing further.
All right.